All right, everybody. Well, it is late night Friday, and you wouldn't even know what we went through here last night because it got wild during the hurricane. But thankfully, as you can see, we still have power at the shop. And it's Sunday, so of course that means it's Cutlass Day. And I have already made some pretty big moves to catch up what I had done to this frame rail over on that frame rail over there. So that's pretty cool. But got some plans tonight to put some more bars around the front of this thing, which I've been needing to do for a while, so that I can maybe get that tube cut off and all that stuff. But anyways, let's get through the intro and get into this thing real serious. All right, well, I did that little short intro, got a phone call, had to leave. We're back Saturday morning. And I forgot to show you guys that, I've started out my video a couple of times with the flag over there. Well, the flagpole was a casualty of the hurricane. And actually, Ricky was here late working on his Danger Ranger and saw it go down, went and grabbed the flag off the road. So big shout out to Ricky for doing that. Like, we always have to make sure that that flag never ends up on the ground. And I will say that it's in times like these, like both on the western coast of Florida and up in the Carolinas, where you can see what some of the things that makes this country great, with people helping out with people that are in trouble. But it definitely got wild here on Thursday night. I know at my house, like north of Gainesville, I had 50 to 60 mile an hour sustained winds for over an hour, and it was in the middle of the night. So it was definitely a little sketch. Had all my kids. I was in and out, making sure that things weren't getting too wild. I mean, they got wild, but, having a plan for if things got even wilder. And I've seen some pictures come back from both the west coast of Florida and the reports where some places way up in the Carolinas got hit really hard. Places I've been, like Sugar Mountain and Beach Mountain, like I guess the mountains just caused a flood down in the valleys because of the water running down off the mountains. And that's wild, especially because that's an area I've been quite a bit. So definitely keeping all of you both on the west coast of Florida and everywhere up through Georgia and the Carolinas and all that stuff in our thoughts and prayers. And like, just hope everybody pulls through this thing okay. But being that we know this video is going to come out on Sunday, let's get into what we're doing on the Cutlass. And I have at least caught this side up with the same work that we had done on the other side. You guys saw the frame bender. You can see evidence of the frame smashing that happened last week. I've got most of the area patched up here. That's actually where I welded the cut on the inside of the frame. Because if you remember last week, I cut this so that I could hammer this down so that these holes were at the same height as these holes. One of those things that just, it could have been some of the welding that tweaked it around. I wasn't paying super close attention to it like I probably should have been. Definitely need to invest in a chassis jig for future projects like this. It's just something I'm going to have to either buy or build. Maybe that's a fun project. We can build one. But anyways, now that we've got that done, I need to head upstairs because up behind that 300ZX race car is all of my Cutlass parts. Well, at least all of the body parts and fenders and hood and I kind of put them up there out of the way because, you know, there's at least a good bit of storage room up there. Obviously, there's enough room for a car. And there's kind of always been a car. First, it was this thing hiding up there. And then now it's that, which the cool story about that car, it has only been a race car its entire life. That car was given to a racer, actually in the Carolinas, I think. Somebody can probably look up the car number. I've got an SCCA logbook for the car. You can see the stickers on the back window there. She's done some racing, done some winning. But this was a body in white car, which means that it was bought, or I guess it gets pulled off of the production line. And they still do this with like Mustangs, and used to do it with Camaros. You could call the factory and buy a body with nothing in it. So there's no seam sealer, there was none of the stick-on insulation, any of those mats. Dust in my eye. But there's none of the insulating mats on that car, so it's a lighter weight option because of all of that being gone. And then I can't remember what class ITR is, but it was some kind of showroom stock type class where it had the stock wheels on it, had to use all the stock brakes, which actually the 300ZX brakes are pretty good because we have one of those as a road race car already. You just haven't seen it yet because it's been tucked away in a trailer over at a friend's house or friend's shop that's 2 miles from here. But anyways, I'm gonna head up there, get my fenders, see if I can maybe grab the front end so that we can engineer this tube that's gonna go from here down a little bit, around and back up to that. And then probably from there, I am going to make the bars that connect from under here. They're gonna go there, come forward, and then come up to this hoop that runs around the front. I think that's my plan for now. Then, if that all goes well to plan, we'll cut out the rest of the firewall, at least up to the shelf here. I'm probably gonna get rid of all that just because of how rusty it is. Maybe it's the other side that's super rusty. Yeah, up in the door. Yep, there it is. Holes, not good. So maybe we'll make the bars that go from up high on the cage down to there, and then that'll give us kind of a really good foundation for the chassis. And then we'll be able to cut this bar out. Ooh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I gotta stop talking and get some work done. Let's go. All right, so it may look like I am crawling into a black hole up there on the top shelf, but there's actually some light up there. It's not quite that bad. Like, I didn't even need to take a flashlight with me. But back against the outside wall, I had my fenders and the nose piece and the new fiberglass front bumper. All of those kind of wedged between some shelving and the wall, the outside wall of the building. And you can tell they've gotten dusty sitting up there, and it actually takes me a minute here to figure out what the thread is on the front of the fascia. I actually think it was one of those weird like stamped nuts, but ironically enough, a 1/4-28 thread nut threads onto the studs that stick out of the header panel that bolts to the front fenders. So had to go digging through some different bolts. I thought maybe it was metric because on these 78 through 80 chassis and bodies, it kind of seems like there was a mix and match. They actually called this chassis the GM metric chassis. So some of the control arm bolts were metric, but then some of the body bolts were standard, like the bolts that hold the fender on. Those are 3/8 coarse thread. So it's kind of a mix and match, and you just kind of got to figure out what's what to be able to get this thing all bolted together. And I probably have a box somewhere that has all of the bolts and nuts that I saved when I took everything apart, but I couldn't find it while I was upstairs. And I do have some boxes that are taped up that have been together for forever with, you know, all kinds of different things up on there. But anyways, give the fenders and the bumper a little clean in here. It looks really good when it's got a little moisture to it, and gives it a really good shine. The fender looks nice dark blue there, and I plan to go back with some kind of color like that. I really like blue when it comes to race cars, even though the burnout car we just did is red, and it does look awesome in red, I will admit that. But for my Cutlass, I'm going to have to stick with some kind of red on there. But anyways, we did all of that bolting on of the front end just to kind of visualize and decide where I want the radiator. And then beyond that, I've got to decide where I want the lower portion of that bar to be, how high up I want it off of the ground, or how high I want it up above the bumper. And the bars that are going to come from the lower control arm mounts, those are going to, I think they're going to come forward at a little bit of an inward angle to match the lower control arm angle, and then they are going to turn up and then another turn up into the hoop that I'm about to make. So they will stick down a little bit more, and it'll kind of act like a ski if I were to ever wheelie this thing and slam it on the ground. Like we just went through a lot of this same measurements on Val's Camaro. So I'm kind of in that same mindset. I do kind of wish this was on the ground so I could maybe pitch it down kind of like we could do with Val's car, but to visualize it a lot better with how the car would rotate if the back tires were on the ground. But anyway, we're going to just do the best we can with what we have here, double check that everything's square, and then go and design up a bar and bend it. Well, as usual, that took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take, but first time the old hot rod's had its nose on in a while, and I know it looks bad without its headlight, but I wanted to make sure that Holly's Retro Bright headlights would fit. So we had put those into Soccer Mom before Sick Week this year. So like 9 months ago. And they are awesome. So I wanted to add those to this. So while the front end was upstairs, I went up and popped one out and measured it. I had double checked with like Google, but I remembered from when I originally had this car that the headlights were kind of a weird size. But I guess it's kind of more common across all of some of the 80s cars and trucks, and it interchanges with some of the other ones. But obviously we've got a not stock front bumper on there. It's a narrowed fiberglass unit. And I did some measuring as well as a little tweaking with some ratchet straps. And honestly, that's kind of just my OCD. I did all of that to move the frame basically 1/8 of an inch. Got my center line, you know, set up down the center of the car. Maybe it's 3/16 of an inch. You can see my old center and then my new center right there on that piece of tubing. But in the name of getting everything square and equal centered on this thing down the center line of the car, I measured it, and it was 1/4 inch longer on one side from measuring from this hole here to the center line and doing the same on the other side. And that basically takes, you know, 1/8 of an inch, pulling it back 1/8 of an inch so that it pulls 1/8 on this side and moves 1/8 on the other side. So we got all that squared up, and then I double checked it with the laser beams. Anyways, to make sure that, you know, nothing moved in this plane. Double checked all my levels in the car, because that's something I need to be doing more often, just to make sure that I am not moving things around. But this thing with a nose on it, I'm kind of excited. That's cool. Like, it's been a long time since the old G-body has been remotely assembled to that spec. And yeah, that's a paint job that me and my dad and one of his work buddies did years ago. And it was holding up really well until taking this thing apart. I've got some cracks actually in the fenders here on this front edge. There's a dent right there I need to fix. But, you know, that's making her look more like a stock car again. Stock car with a really wild chassis underneath it. All right, I could stare at this all day, but I'm gonna get to work and bend up this front bar that goes around the front, and then we'll see if we can get the other ones. I'm kind of running out of time here. I at least got to get that front hoop done, and then try and do the math and the engineering on those lower bars. At least for what I think I'm gonna do on the lower bars. We'll have to see. But anyways, enough talking, let's get back to work. All right, well, now that I have my measurements from the frame and how far I want to do things, hop into the computer, jump on the BendTech design program, design up the bar, go find a piece of tubing, which I thought I was going to have to drag an entire stick of 1.5 inch chromoly tubing out, but I had one that was 75 inches and I needed 73 inches. So that worked out really good right off the bat. And then I have to change the die sets over in the Rogue Fab bender. And the piece that actually takes the longest to switch out is their thin wall roller. I'm probably gonna buy a second one of these at some point, just because primarily we're bending 1 5/8 083 and 1.5 065. And it just makes sense to maybe have two of them, so it's a quicker turnover between tube sizes, because it takes a couple of minutes to squeeze the pieces together to get the little snap rings in there. And actually here in a second I drop it and the piece goes, the little security clips, I guess you could call them, that lock the axle shafts in for the thin wall roller. Two of them go blasting across the shop, and I have to go find them. I end up getting some new ones to put it all back together, but it takes a 98-degree bend to get back to a 90-degree bend once the tube is out of the roller itself, and or out of the bender itself, just because all tubing has some form of spring back to it, and chromoly, at least from my experience, chromoly is more prone to spring back than like mild steel tubing. Maybe the real thick mild steel tubing would still spring back a lot, but I haven't done a lot of real thick mild steel tube bending because we are building race cars, not battleships. So I did a mock-up of the tube in the front end, figured out which angle the tube needed to be cut at to fit flush with the end of the frame rail there. Turns out that was a 7-degree angle, so got both of them cut. The top hoop there was parallel. We already know the end of the frame rail is parallel with the center line of the chassis and all of that good stuff. So we're kind of, making some progress on this thing here and getting it tacked together, and then I'm going to go ahead and start welding a little bit on each side, verifying that the bar across the front maintains itself being level, because it can, especially when you get the first couple of tacks on something, or first couple of tack welds, things can move just because you're not holding it there with a lot of material. So if you put a big fat weld somewhere on one part of the tube, it may tweak and bend the tube around a little bit. But what I like to do is get a really, really tight fitment, so there's not a lot of places where the tube can bend to, and then get tacks kind of in 3 quadrants around the tube, and then come back and weld about 1/2 inch at a time, maybe 3/4 of an inch, to get it all sealed up. All right, well, check that out. Which you probably saw in the time lapse already, but oh, I left the welder on too. Nice 000 there. And that is square with that bar, which is square with that bar, that bar. Yeah, gotta keep everything level. So, it's gonna wrap it up for this video, because if you've stayed put for this long to watch the entire video, it's already a decently long video. So, I am going to go ahead and get this video edited. It's already getting kind of late. So, next video, we are going to add some more stuff to that. And I may plug these too. We'll see. Finally starting to look like a little something something. But like I said, that'll wrap it up for this video. Can't thank you all enough for following along with this build. You know, it's I got a long ways to go before sick week, especially with two other cars that got to get done before sick week. That Chevy 2 and that Camaro right there. And of course, we've got Soccer Mom to get ready to go, which she's pretty good as far as we know. But we're going to go do some testing with her, try to see if we can get back to our old 8th mile times. And then if I happen to send it through the 1/4 mile when we better our 8th mile time, you know, that'll just be what it'll be. But we've got Danger Ranger 9000 coming up in a couple of weeks from Friday. So I've got to do some new allowed tweaks to the Ranger. They're allowing us to cut springs as well as use camber bolts on the front suspension. So got a little tweaking I need to make on that thing to try and keep up with the other guys like Drew and Eddie and JH and a whole bunch of other people that I'm sure are bringing the heat. And I've won 2 out of 3 of the Danger Ranger 9000s. This is going to be the toughest one yet, by far. And it will be the fastest one yet, by far. So anyways, I'm kind of just jibber jabbering, but it's time for me to go edit this video, get it saved and uploaded, so it'll post tomorrow on Sunday, which is actually today. So thanks again for watching. See you guys next time.